Boy, what a difference a few days makes. What a contrast to just what, last week? Before I hack this thing up, I want to get a little runtime on it. And that's a chain from Tractor Supply, and bar is what you can see. So anyway, let's see if it fires up and get a little firewood. Needed a field tune up, and that big old log right there obliged. You want to laugh? It just dawned on me. Give you an idea on how flexible those Autotunes are. There is no fuel filter on that fuel line. I put it in, but I never put the filter back on. So it's sitting there trying to find fuel, still finding enough to run. So I guess I'll go back and do the muffler mod and put the fuel filter on it. We'll come out here and do some more running. But that, my friends, is impressive. Yeah, this is pretty funny. But, you know, it's what happens when you rush. Look at that. Oh boy. So let me put the fuel filter on it, and we'll go out and do it again tomorrow. Put that back in there. What was happening is when it started getting down a little bit on gas, that little tube was popping up out of the gas. Shut itself off. My current craze is to poke a hole with a diameter chosen by me, and then instead of having the tube protrude into the muffler, basically have it surround the outside and go flush up against the outside of the muffler. And that way I have a little more control of the orifice size, and then I can go back in with a die grinder and blend that if I choose to do so. Get a little bit better flow. Does it work? Seems to. But a little more work to do, and then I'll just paint it up and set it on the saw. Well, let's see if we can get that thing back on. And maybe I'll fire it up and put up a short video, because I thought it was funny today that I was out there running that stupid thing without the fuel filter. So it's going to have to go through its whole retuning itself cycle again, both for the muffler and for the fact it was being strangled to death. Yeah, I've been using this stuff right here. This seems to work for the most part. Nothing seems to stick on that brass for long, so I get my Cyclops effect. So, now we'll see. Well, I got it back together. Maybe I'll put up a real quick video at the big hole. The inside diameter is not quite that large, but it's still a big hole. And I've always kind of gone by the adage that short blowdown likes big holes. So we'll just see what it does. I think the next one I'm going to rotate a little further to the side. I was a little bit nervous about the clearance with the chain brake, and also I didn't want to get in front of the bucking spike, right? But I do want a little more to the side. I don't know if I'm going to do this one differently, just run it the way it is, but we'll see. See if it starts. I'm kind of curious what it sounds like. Yeah, it's going to be all screwed up for a little bit. Everything's all different on it. So the carburetor doesn't know what to do just yet. Get a little more choke. Well, that was 3 minutes to tune it on the low side. I don't have a piece of wood right now to tune it on the high side. Let me just see if it just lights right off without me having to go to high idle. And that's how you know it's tuned properly, where without having to go high idle on it, it just lights right off with one pull. And this thing is running good. It's running a lot better actually. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't know how you can actually, but that big old hole in that muffler is loud as hell. Well, I guess you can tell that. But the other thing it does is it seems like it picks up the throttle response. I don't know if you noticed, there's just, I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but there's zero lag on these. I know some people used to complain, be it the Steel or be it the Husqvarna Autotunes, there was always a little bit of a throttle response lag. Well, here, listen. And that, my friends, is before it even breaks in. It's not broken yet. So I think we have I think we're going to have a little bit of fun with this saw. Now I'm going to use this bar and chain combo for firewood for just a little bit. I have an 8-pin sprocket, and you still can hog in with it, so a little increased chain speed. In this scenario, it might pick up a little bit of cut speed doing that. I'm going to put a 7-pin back on it and put a 28 on it, or possibly a 24, and put this thing to work in the next week or so. And then just like we did with the Husqvarna G395, and before that the Husqvarna 565, we're going to put a season on this thing and see if it holds up. Remember, this is a junk pile build in the truest form. Now I keep getting people asking me, are you going to port that thing? And I don't know. I think I'm going to leave that one right alone. The reason is I want to leave it as like a Farmer Jones type build that anybody can replicate. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, but on my channel I'm not so much about trying to build freak show saws or show off what I can do that you might not be able to do. It's really about trying to enable people to do things. So I'm not quite as interested on porting things on the channel, but it does not mean it's not going to happen. And I think what we're going to do is on this saw right here with the busted fins, I think I'm going to port that one instead, and then see if I can turn it into a hand grenade. And the thing I've learned with the 562 was there's only so much you really want to do before you start getting into the limit to what that carburetor can deliver for fuel. So what I did is, instead of trying to get more power up top, which is usually what most people do when they try to port a saw, is I left that alone, the port timing, pretty much. I added a little bit of intake timing because I could, and it made a difference. But I spent more time trying to get the flow through the saw a little bit better, blending edges and things like that, working the lower transfers with the muffler mod. Now, I was seeing, when I had Common Service Tool to play with, I was seeing, you know, I'd make a change, I'd go run it, I'd go put it across Common Service Tool, so it would give me a readout of the carb settings. I found it didn't take me a whole lot before I started moving those mixture numbers down into the 40s and 30s. And that, to me, was about as far as I wanted to go. And the reason is I wanted to have Autotune have the flexibility to really tune to a really, really cold day or a warm day. And what happens is when you start getting into the single digits, because I do run my saws when it's that cold, there's a perceptible drop in the numbers on Common Service Tool when you look at the reading of the operating history of these Autotune saws as it tries to deliver more and more fuel, because the air is more and more dense. In order to get the mixture right, they got to keep dumping fuel into it. So for me, and I know this is going to sound completely arbitrary, but it's really not, I kind of set my limit to when the saw was being worked in the 30 degree to 34 degree range, that the high and the low speed numbers I was getting on Common Service Tool, looking at the operating history, was in the 40 range. I didn't want to get any lower than that. You know, I could get them lower, I could get more power. I had one saw I built, it was with a EL46, and they run a little bit lean anyway, but I had that thing down in the 20s, and that thing was a ripping saw. But I just had this terrible vision of a cold snap, and the guy goes and runs it in a cold snap, and next thing you know, he's running lean and sticking the saw. So those are the kind of things that I think about. I know online it's more about power and bling and all that, but if I'm going to do something like this, I want to make sure it actually lasts. So I'll take a little bit of a more conservative approach. And the porting concept to me is changing the timing, not necessarily digging out the holes. And which brings up another whole subject, and I'm not going to get into it right now, but I have a slightly different take on some of the porting concepts and some. And again, it's based on trying to make it reliable. Randomly opening up things like, the exhaust, just randomly opening up holes without putting thought into it, I don't think is a good approach, because you might get a gain somewhere, but there's a loss somewhere else. You sort of have to think about it from carburetor to exhaust to do it right. Now, this one here, I'm forfeiting that. This is just simply a Farmer Jones build for fun, and I don't care if it blows up tomorrow. But what I had done when I was doing my 562 builds was I did enough research where I knew how that was going to run in the summertime, and I waited for a period of time to see how it was going to work in the cold weather as well before I sort of settled on what I was going to do with that saw. And the reward is, yeah, they still go. I still have a 2014 model here that I run, and I built a bunch that were out in the field, and from what I can tell, they're still out there, still running. I haven't heard anyone come back complaining. For that matter, when I did talk to them over the last year or so, the ones I had built back in, I don't know, 2014, 15, 16, that era, they're still running now. So it worked. I've kind of moved away from that, but maybe we'll move back. I think this is going to be a fun saw. Let me see if it'll restart again after it's been sitting for a little bit without having to go to high idle. Yeah, I like it. I like the way that's beginning to trend. So anyway, so here's the next junk pile build. I'm not sure it's going to get done. It looks to me like it's complete, but I need to get anti-vibe, air filter. I don't know what the compression is yet. I haven't tested it. And it looks like it needs some chain brake parts. Oh, and to the people who ask about these saws here, these two right here, both of these were obviously crushed saws. And, you know, I guess the only thing I can say is that's just what's available. If I had ones that were clean with bad top ends, or ones that had bad, you know, bottom ends and they were reasonably clean, I would have bought them in a heartbeat, but they just don't exist around here. Now, the other thing I can tell you, which is not good, is just trying to get carb parts, like just for example getting the filter holder. They're like back order for months, you know. So some of the basic stuff, you know, the supply chain that got stopped in 2020, 21, it's still affecting these new saws. And you know, there's good news and bad news. Obviously Husqvarna is going to eventually catch up and support these things. The bad news is, you know, don't break them. You know, it's hard to find parts. Top ends are available, bearings are available, short blocks are available, stuff like that, but the carburetor, filter holder, the intake stuff is hard to find. I haven't tried looking for ignitions. I think this one's going to be fine anyway, but you know, that kind of thing is hard to find. So, for now, but alright, I think I'm going to put together a short video.